For many Christians, inequality among genders is unthinkable. We believe that there is no Jew or Greek, no slave or free, no male or female. We may even look negatively on other societies and religions because of their stance on the role of women. But what do we as Christians truly believe? While we say that women are equal in God's eyes, most churches still teach that they cannot participate in certain areas of ministry simply because they're women, specifically pastoring churches or having authority over men. But where does this concept come from? Is it biblical?
One thing that we often don't realize when we go to the Word, though, is it's a cross-cultural book. It's written in a different language, in a different time, in a different historical period, to different cultures. And because it's always sitting on our nightstand, we tend to think of it as ours.
In the book, Why Not Women?, David J. Hamilton and Lauren Cunningham give scriptural evidence supporting the idea that women are, in fact, equal and released in every way to minister just as men are.
In the Old Testament, you have Deborah, who's the head of state and a prophetess. She had the same exact ministry as Samuel. But in the time of Christ, they had taken on the Greek concept that women were subhuman, and so they were being squeezed out of the work of God.
1 Corinthians 14 is a favorite passage for some to quote. Let women be silent in the church. What they fail to recognize is that in the verses just previous to that, it also tells the tongue speakers and the prophets to be silent.
He says, when you're in church and several of you are prophesying, shut up, be silent. Then he said it for those speaking in tongues when there's no translator, be silent. And he said to women who were asking questions right out loud to their husbands across the room, be silent. He was saying, God is a God of order, so if you have a question, ask your husband at home. And at that time, that was Paul saying, husbands, teach your wives. In other words, break the law of the land. For the Greek law said, don't teach a woman.
Paul was not singling out women. He was trying to establish a new structure. No one had church before. So he's trying to explain how you take turns and how you do things in order and how you do what you do in the church to build each other up.
Another popular scripture that seems to support the rule of men is where Paul says the man is the head of the woman. Many have assumed that the word head refers to a hierarchical system, but does it really? For that answer, you're going to have to read the book, but it does question some of our commonly held beliefs.
The most commonly used English translation was translated by 70 individuals, all of whom were men. They made sure that it had Presbyterians and Baptists and a wide range of theological persuasions, but although they're great Greek and Hebrew scholars that are women, they were excluded from the process.
Phoebe, she was a minister at the Church of Cenchrea. The word diaconus is sometimes translated, well, when it's a woman, it's translated that she's a servant. But when it's a man, the same word is translated, he's a minister. So obviously there's a bias even on the part of translators.
Because until the Roman Catholic Church formed, the church was pretty egalitarian in regards to women's roles in leadership and in all areas. But once you have the Roman Catholic movement, both Catholicism and then Protestantism keeps pretty much a clean sweep on. No, there is a hierarchy.
As Christians, we must be willing to examine and re-examine our beliefs. If we don't, we risk becoming rigid, unthoughtful, and intolerant of other views. Our beliefs may become based more on pride and emotion than scholarship and reason.
Particularly guys are working through issues of insecurity and trying to figure out now, who am I? And, how do I relate to an aspiring, talented, passionate, dedicated, gifted female leader that's in my ranks?
All the things we see about gender are symptoms. They're not the core. The core is who we are in God, God's view of us. And I think there are very few Christians that have dealt with their core beliefs about identity. They just get saved and carry on thinking the way they did before. They think they're saved, but that's not an identity statement. That's a status. Who am I in God? That's an identity statement.
When men think they are better than women, and therefore women can't do this, they can't do this, they can't do that, we can have the titles, we can have the salaries, and so on. What is it that tempted Lucifer to cause him to fall from the Holy of Holies? It was pride.
And I think the enemy will turn men or women. It doesn't matter to him which part is missing, as long as you can't see the full glory of God through the two working together. So I think it's a terrific spiritual battle.
But surprisingly, there are many Christian women who oppose this view just as vehemently as men.
We are all raised from day one to think that there is a competition between men and women. And if that men will win, if not that men should win. And that's universal. And women are just as enculturated in that as men are. And we don't even know it. Nobody knows it. It's not like men are actually going, or women are actually going, but it's tacit. It's a belief system. It's a worldview, and it's complete.
I've had as many men come up to me and say, this is so freeing. I don't have to fit this artificial role that doesn't match my gifts because of something that someone has said I must do just because I'm a male. And in the same way, it can be very freeing for women who can realize that God has given them gifts and He intends them to use it. He does not limit them.
When she is released into it, and she's obviously right for the position, it brings tremendous sense of freedom to those who are around, because they all recognize, everyone knows that that particular person, who is a woman, is gifted and called and to be a leader.
I believe that this issue is so significant because if we get it right, we might be able to present the gospel in such a way that Muslims, Hindus, and Buddhists will come to know Jesus. Not only because we've released missionaries who are both men and women, but because women who have always been marginalized, who've been veiled, who've been silenced, who've walked behind, who have not named, they will find that there's a God who cares for them. And as they hear of that love, they're transformed. Then their families, their society, their cultures will be transformed.